two of them heading in that direction. Would you please call the roll, Ms. Whitby?
Gibson.
Present.
Yielding.
Here.
Robinson.
Here.
Thomas. Berry.
Present.
Vestal.
Present.
Height.
Present.
And Witcher.
Here.
The quorum is present.
Thank you, Ms. Whitby. Can I ask that we stand for the prayer to be led by Alderman Witcher, followed by the pledge by Alderman Height?
Our gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to serve the public, and thank you for this opportunity to do the works. Guide us as we go into this evening and watch after us as we go through the week. Thank you for your love, and thank you for your nurturing. We pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On the minutes,
So move.
Second.
on the
Vote.
both minutes of both the regular and special meeting be accepted and filed as submitted on the motion.
Gibson.
Yes.
Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Berry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
On communications, do I have a blanket motion?
So move.
Second. Number two.
I want to pull number 2.
Number two. On the motion with the pulling of number 2.
Gibson.
Yes.
Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Berry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
While we've done that, with your acceptance and concurrence, our new Main Street Director, Michael Drake. Michael, if you'd stand up, we want to welcome you to the city workforce. As you may realize, we're very impressed with your credentials, and now we look forward for you putting those credentials along with your experience to work in making our Main Street buzz with activity along with other parts of our community. We appreciate it. Thank you. Would you read number 2?
Yes, sir. This is a letter dated September 2nd, 2003 to the North Little Rock City Council. It's regarding requesting a special use allowing a tattoo establishment. Dear City Council, I'm the owner of Gator's Floating Restaurant located by the Main Street Bridge. I would like to expand my services allowing tattooing in one of the upstairs rooms because one of my existing employees is a tattoo artist. It is my understanding that to proceed through the special use process, the City Council, as owner of the riverbank, must agree to allow this request to be discussed. By this correspondence, I am requesting the Council to consider my request so that the public hearing process may continue. Sincerely, Pat Kelly.
Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept and file.
Second.
In discussion, let me see Mr. Kelly in the audience. Let me mention to the council, Mr. Kelly has talked to me on a couple occasions about having a lease longer than what is in existence now. And let me just make sure everybody's aware of what's in existence now. We did have a lease with the Spirit, and the Spirit and its operation down there. You might recall that at some significant expense about 10 years ago, we relocated the Spirit and its accompanying vessels from our riverfront park down to where it's located now, somewhere in the neighborhood of $130,000, $140,000. We have that lease expired about 3 years ago, and we've been going on a month-to-month basis. Mr. Kelly has visited with me, I guess, as recent as about a month ago, asking for a lease of at least a couple years. And while I'm sympathetic and I want to bring this to the council's attention, so if I get any direction otherwise, with the activity that's going on, I'm a little reluctant to enter into a long-term lease on behalf of this city, but I'm not wedded any strongly to any one direction. Although with the things that are developing, I've generally been looking to try to retain as much latitude as we could. But I understand where Mr. Kelly's coming from. He wants to make some improvements. It's hard to do that with a month-to-month lease, although he is subleasing from the original Spirit. people who own the Spirit. And as you know, that riverboat is no longer here. It was sold and is now somewhere up north, to the best of my knowledge. So that's the status. Mr. Kelly is about to begin, or has begun, when I think he realized it, at least my understanding, ceased operations of the tattoo parlor in conjunction with his restaurant, and he's going through the process. We as the owner, in accordance with our regular rules, need to sign off on whether or not we would permit this, both as the owner and then as the city council. If it goes through the planning commission and comes to us for a special use, then we would be in a position to act on it a second time. With that, Mr. Kelly in his letter is asking this council to authorize him as the owner of the property to pursue that special use. Mr. Kelly, if I misspoke or said anything that's not correct, feel free. I'll open the microphone to you.
My name is Pat Kelly, and I lease the boat down here on the river in which I operate a business called Gators Bars and Grill. Through the period of the last 2 years, I've owned it 2 years as of September 1st. We've done numerous improvements to try to fit into the upscale North Little Rock community. Along that path, I've run into walls of this or walls of that, but that's neither here nor there. The room in question of the tattoo, the zoning department came through and said basically this boat was built in 1939. That room right there, I see all your other improvements that you're doing, but that room has got to be fixed. So if anybody knows the owner of this boat, his name is Henry Birch, told me upon when I rented the boat that any repairs or anything that you do is at my cost. So while fixing the room, I thought to myself, because of the fact that there are a lot of motorcycle enthusiasts, which are professionals just like you all, that use motorcycles as a form of entertainment, that come down there, that while fixing this room, I would make it a tattoo room, not a parlor. There is a difference. We did exactly as the zoning department did. We refloored it, retiled it, re-roofed it, it's brand new. It looks like a hospital room. So while the idea came into mind, a gentleman asked me who did my work, in which the gentleman that works for me and does the tattooing says, "Who does your work?" And I said, "Well, he's one of my employees." It was on a Monday afternoon, and I didn't have nothing to do, and I said, "Jake," I said, "let's go in there and let's see if this thing really does work." So there's never ever been any tattoo done in the level of open for business. There's been tattoo done on me, and to my way of thinking, it's no different than opening a photo studio with no pictures on the wall. You got to have something to show the quality of which your person is going to be able to do the work. This is not a tattoo parlor in which is going to be blinking lights, have crazy guys hanging off the edge of the boat. This is merely a room that anybody that comes down there that wishes to have a clean environment, a professional tattoo to cover something that had been done in their past. We do not promote this. We do not advertise this. It is merely a room that we were told to clean up. We did. We turned it into a room that could be used as A, a tattoo room, B, a cold storage room. I would like to ask of all the commission to please look at it in a way that it's not going to do anything but bring extra revenue to the city, for there are a lot of bike enthusiasts that come down to Gators, which are outstanding people. That's basically all I got to say. Is that we've done a lot. Anybody that's never been down there, please go down there and see the improvements we've done. We've tried to change it and make it fit in with the mayor's scheme. The boat was built in 1939, and we've painted it and made it to where hopefully, by the grace of God, that we can fit right in with his theme is American Museum theme, and we won't have to go anywhere. But this little tattoo deal is merely an alternate place to go, because if anybody's ever been into a tattoo parlor, I know I have, and they'll scare you to death. You know, they're unclean. The people that are the tattoo artists, for the most part, are scary. The people that come to my place are professionals as yourself that choose the motorcycles as a form of entertainment. They see me, this is what you get, this is who I am, and they say, who does your work? Well, my employee, that guy right there, he does the work. So I don't know what else to say except that maybe that I hope that everybody takes it under consideration as it not being a retail outlet that's going to be advertised in newspapers and all over the place, but more as a alternative place to go for my already existing customers that choose to have a tattoo covered or one done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Motion?
I have a question.
All right.
Mr. Kelly,
Whoops, Mr. Kelly?
you mentioned motorcycle enthusiasts.
Yes, sir.
Are you getting any of the bicycle enthusiasts in your establishment?
Quite a few, yes, sir.
It seems to me that there's a lot of bicycle enthusiasts using your parking lot out there on a regular basis.
There's
And-
everybody using our...
That's what I've witnessed. And you just recently put a canopy up on the back end of your boat, is that correct? Is that a new canopy?
No, the canopy's been there. It's just never been cleaned,
Okay.
cleaned up.
It's been cleaned in recently.
We've just got done. We've painted it. We've retinted the windows. If anybody just drive by and look at it. That's the whole key. We're behind the wall. We're out of sight. We're out of mind. It's had 15 different owners, and it's had a lot of bad reputation to overcome. It's taken me 2 years to get it where it is now, and I'm hoping that it's, in the eyes of the city of the North Little Rock, more of a attraction rather than a bar or a restaurant, because that's the way I promote it. It's a fun place. You come down there, you have fun. And if you ever get a chance to come down, you will experience it for yourself. We run a real tight ship. We're real strict because of the ABC policies. Our bar area is very small. We do not encourage the alcohol, mainly because I am a 4-year recovering alcoholic myself. So I know what alcohol can do to a person. Kids are welcome. It's a fun place. Whenever we see kids, we give them little alligators. I should have brought some to show you. But it's just, I just want to know or have an idea of what Gators needs to do to fit in with the city, because most people never see me. I'm up in the kitchen, and I'm cooking, or I'm either doing the advertising. So you don't have to worry about seeing me delivering your food and wondering if it's edible or not. You know, I've got people without tattoos that do that.
Alderman Hyde, you finished?
I'm finished.
Alderman Thomas?
I guess the only question that I had, I know while I was in the military, many of the people that I knew got tattoos, but most of the time they were drunk. And I was wondering if that isn't a real problem with you.
It's against the law. It's against the law to tattoo anybody who has had anything to drink. And because of that fact, your alcohol thins your blood, and when you tattoo anybody the alcohol and the thing of the blood makes you bleed. So we do not tattoo you if you have been drinking.
The fellows that I know that now regret it, they violate the law, I guess, because that's what happened.
That's why this whole thing came into. I'll tell you how it all came in. A gentleman, I was walking through, and a lot of people know me down there, and once in a while I'll get out of my hole, which is the kitchen, and I'll walk through and I'll thank everybody for coming down, and somebody asked where I got my work done. And the gentleman that did the work happened to be on my payroll and be standing about 15 feet away. And he says, well, I had this done back in, a long time ago. Is there anything you can do to it? And the gentleman said, yes, I can fix that. But it was never done at our place because of the fact we have to wait. We know, Robert Boyles will vouch for me if he's in here. I've been to the Planning Commission 100 times to try to make sure that everything is done right down there, because I don't want to get on the mayor's bad side. You know how that is. But anyway, no, everything is done in very strict. We have people, gentlemen, as well as ladies, that will come down there to enjoy karaoke or to listen to a band in which, upon pulling any police record, you will see there has never been a problem at Gators Bar and Grill, because we are one of the strictest in the states for ID policy. If you do not have an ID, you don't get served at Gators. And the reason being is whether you're 24 to 64, if you lost your ID, you lost it one of two ways. Either the inability to consume alcohol or failure to pay child support. So we will not serve you. And we stamp the hands, and so therefore that's why we have no problems down there. You can bring your family down there. We have numerous people come down after church to eat the catfish, because the catfish, they say, is real wonderful. We have a real fun place down there, but I just had this one room in which one of two choices. I could put a tattoo room in there and allow whether it be a bike with two pedals or a motorcycle or just anybody that enjoyed his work, to be covered up in a clean, neat environment in which you don't have to worry about some of the things that you might have to worry about in other tattoo parlors. Becky Benz, which is the health inspector, has already been down there. Her words, quote for quote, was, that's the cleanest tattoo room, I quote room because we are not a parlor, that she has ever seen. We are a very upscale, clean place down there. If you don't know where it's at, it's behind the wall. We're in the flood zone, so to speak.
I think this council did support a sign that we worked with you on about a year ago.
Exactly, yeah, because nobody knew where we were. The council has been awesome. I will say that. They have gone out of their way to help me to try to get the boat where it is now. But what I would like to ask the council and the people in the audience, just drive by there one day and see the changes that it's made. It's no longer Battleship Gray and half sinking. It's nice and bright, and it's sparkling, and it's could fit right in with what you're doing with your Maritime Museum, because it's built in 1939 and it's called the Patriot. The original owner is 94 years old, still alive, lives in Louisiana. His son flew up last summer and brought all the information which was submitted to the Historic Society to try to be put on the Historic Society, in which I never got any correspondence back. But I want to be part of North Little Rock. I don't want to go anywhere, and I will do what's necessary, except cut my hair, of course. But to fit in with what North Little Rock is expecting that boat to be. That boat is not owned by me, but I want to buy it. But I've already dumped in $262,000 to bring it from where it was to where it is now, to where you can go down there and sit on furniture that you're not going to fall over on, and sit in a nice clean environment in which before you probably would make it to the door and turn around and walk away.
Well, Pat, you've been given a lot of airtime tonight, so if I can see if any council member has any questions.
I don't have a question, just comments.
All right. Well, then.
Okay, I'd just like to say that I think he does an excellent job. I've been down there. He's got the Riverside Rotary Club that meets there. Our Rotary Club, North Little Rock Club, has been there on occasion when we had to move out of Alltel. I mean, the food's really great, and he's got a real clean, real nice establishment. Yeah, it is a place for motorcycle enthusiasts go. Also, bicycle people down there when they're riding the river trail. It's the only restaurant either in Little Rock or North Little Rock on the river. When you get down there, when it's really nice, and like it was this past weekend, being out there, it's really something else.
Well, it's like we try to promote it. It's not a restaurant. It's not a bar. It's a fun place to come.
On the
If
motion,
you want food, we got it. If you want drink, you got it.
the motion is to accept and file, which by accepting and file, we'll take as this council giving permission for Mr. Kelly to apply through the Planning Commission to have a special use that will then come back to this council after it's dealt with to deal with that. So this is simply to authorize him that we
This
as
is
the
signing
owner,
this as the owner stamp
the owner,
on.
as the owner saying to a sublessee that he has permission to seek a special use, and then it'll come back to the council for that. On the motion.
Gibson,
No.
Yielding,
Yes.
Robinson,
No.
Thomas,
No.
Barry,
Yes.
Vestal,
Yes.
Height,
Yes.
and Witcher,
Yes.
5-3.
Motion carries.
I have one other comment.
Thank you.
The other comment is I think that we need to look at giving him a 2-year lease with an option so he can go and make some more improvements down there. He's been operating month to month. He's put $260,000 into it. I've looked at the sales tax receipts from A&P. He brings in a lot of money, and it's a really nice place to go. So, I mean, I think we need to look at that and give the man a lease and let him operate his business. He was down there when no one else was even thinking about doing anything down the river. So I just want to leave it at that, and I'm going to be looking at that.
I know me and the mayor, we've talked over this many times, and the 2-year lease having that little clause in there that you could be there 3 days into that 2-year lease and we could say goodbye. I just don't want to wake up every morning and be like a crap shoot, you know. I want to be part of y'all. I want to be the the restaurant that's built around your maritime museum. You know, they got to eat somewhere. They got to go somewhere.
Pat, we appreciate it. We got a few other things we got to do. and,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, do we need to take any action on number 7? I don't think so, but
I don't think so either. Miss Woodard, this is a memo from Dave Wilson regarding the stand-down. I think that's just simply to share with y'all the fact that, you know, this council authorized us to do it, and that's just the fact that it's a signed agreement that we did in compliance with the authorization that you gave us to do about 2 months ago, I believe. So we just provided that to you to show you the final agreement, but no, there's nothing that I'm aware of that we need to do on that.
if you read the last sentence, it says he's requesting that we attach this to the stand-down agreement, which was recently signed as a part of Resolution 6522. So we probably need a motion to accept and file this and attach it to the original resolution.
I believe the city clerk's already done that.
Have you?
Yes.
Okay. Don't need to do it then.
Let me ask Miss Artis Boykin. Can you come to the microphone, please? As I walk down there, let me just introduce Miss Boykin to you. She was selected by National Grandparents, Inc. as the Grandparent of the Year. And many of you probably realize that I became a member of those ranks about a little over a year ago. So grandparents are special people to me, but this is a special lady for North Little Rock. Artis is the activities director for Campus Towers, and she is raising 6 grandchildren right now from ages 9 to 16, and we wanted her to come up here and tell her how proud we are of her selection, but even more so how proud I am sure you are, as we are, of the fine young boys and girls that you're raising. I know I had a chance to, and we'll let you, if you want to, say a word or two about them, but looking at their resumes, from the president of a Sunday school class or a church, that they, that each of their little introductions that I saw, told us that we're going to have 6 terrific citizens, either the city does now or whatever community they choose to live in. So let me, on behalf of a grateful city and a grateful community, present Artis Boykin in honor on the 7th day of September, in honor of her being named Grandparent of the Year in the state of Arkansas by National Grandparents, Inc. Congratulations, Artis.
I don't have a whole lot to say, but I would like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and all the city council and all the people in North Little Rock. Again, I'm trying to raise 6 of my grandchildren. They range from age 16 to 9. The 16-year-old is a student at Mills University Studies. The 15-year-old, the 16 is a boy, the 15 is a boy, and he's a freshman at North Little Rock High School, the East Campus. There's a 13-year-old girl. She's a 8th grade student at Lakewood Middle School. She's a cheerleader, and she is the president of the youth department at our church. And the 3 younger children attend Full Council Christian Academy. They all play basketball. We're all into scouting, Boy Scouting, Girl Scouting, and whatever else you can name. So we're really proud of this honor. We're humbled by it, and we want to thank all of you.
Well, we thank you, Artis. Thank you. You take care. All right, let's see. We've got a couple presentations. Mr. Smith, I know you're out there. Which one needs to go first? I think you told me one had to go first. Stick your head in here, Mr. Joe Smith, and let's get going on, I don't know, water and wastewater. I think Mr. Roberts on John Roberts, if I'm not mistaken. Let's just...
Yeah, John first.
Okay. Well, you were not taking a nap. We appreciate it, Mr. Smith.
You woke me up, sir.
Okay. You need to help Mr. Roberts do anything?
Mr. Susky is drilled in this procedure right here. Mr. Susky?
As you know, Mr. John Roberts is the director of the Pulaski County Solid Waste Authority. And as we all know, starting the beginning or the last Monday of this month, if I'm not mistaken, we start our recycling program.
All right, I need the owner of the lights.
Here it is.
There. All right. The purpose of my presentation tonight, Mayor and City Council members, is to apprise you, give you an overview of what the Solid Waste District does. First slide, please.
You might want to move it a little bit to the right. I think that might be a little bit better with.
Yeah, it's...
All right, there we go.
Back in 1991, the Arkansas State Legislature, under then Governor Bill Clinton and his environmental package, formed 16 solid waste management districts in the state of Arkansas. Pulaski County is one of 5 single county districts. Our mission is to assist the jurisdictions, that's you folks and everyone else here, within our boundaries in planning and implementing municipal solid waste management programs and services. We just had a good example of that on the curbside recycling program, which is coming into effect in North Little Rock. Next slide, please. We are governed by a board of 6 members. Next slide. I went out and got 6 male models to pose for these pictures, and you'll notice the second from the left is the best looking one on there. He's the vice chairman of our board, And I've got to tell you all, this is a great board to work with.
You need to clean your glasses, Mr. Lawrence, I'm afraid.
They're very progressive. They've been extremely supportive on all the programs that we have undertaken, and it's a real pleasure to work for them and with them. Next slide. We're unusual in Pulaski County in that we have an advisory committee for our board. Hit it again. Our technical committee, and once more, is made up of the public works and sanitation directors in the various jurisdictions. Our procedure is, before we have a board meeting, we meet with these guys 2 weeks in advance. They are where the rubber meets the road. They are the ones that, for example, over here with the curbside recycling program, Mr. Ford is going to be the man to make sure that happens. So we're proud of our technical committee, and it's a real pleasure working with them too. Next, please. Where do we get our money? And we'll just kind of hit this one at a time. First of all, hit it. It comes from state grants. Obviously, like everyone else, our state grants are getting smaller and smaller every year. This year, our state grants are funding the drop-off centers that we have, one we have over here in North Little Rock, as well as our household chemical collection centers. Our board decides how this money is spent. Next one. Landfill tipping fees. We have 3 landfills in Pulaski County, and for every ton of material that is dumped in these landfills, we get 30 cents from the tipping, 30 cents a ton for the tipping fees. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not, because the average cost per ton is $30 per ton, so we're getting about a little less than 1%. Next. We also are responsible for monitoring the hauler licenses. If you're going to dump anything in our landfills, you have to have a license that comes from our office. So we license all the haulers, and we'll get into that in a little more detail later. Next, please. Back in the old days, when interest rates were good, we could earn some money on our reserve funds from interest payments. These days, we're lucky if we can earn 1.5% or 2%. Next, please. In our regional planning, we're required to do a 7-year regional needs analysis, which we just completed a couple of years ago. I can tell you from having done that we're in good shape so far as landfills are concerned in Pulaski County, in that we have a landfill that's owned by the city of Little Rock that has a life of about 100 years. We have a landfill out here in the Jacksonville area, the Two Pine landfill, that has a life equal to that or even more. The BFI landfill out of Maple Bell Pike probably only has a 4 to 5 year life left in it unless they acquire some more land. We also do a 5-year regional plan in conjunction with the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality. I sit on that committee for ADEQ, and so our plan is exactly like theirs is. Next, please. Here are some of our programs and services. Next. We operate the recycling drop-off centers. Next. We operate the household chemical collection centers. Next. We have a recycling education program. Right now, our recycling coordinators in the North Little Rock schools bringing recycling to the forefront in anticipation of the kickoff of curbside recycling. Next. We have public awareness programs. You've seen our bus running around town. You've seen our newspaper ads. You've seen our billboards. We've heard our radio commercials. Mayor Hayes did some radio commercials for us last year along with the rest of the board members. So we constantly are trying to keep recycling, waste production out in front of the public through our public awareness programs. Next, please. We have a roll-off container program that I'll explain in a little more detail, but this is a service that we provide to neighborhood primarily for neighborhood cleanups. Next. And we talked about the hauler licensing program. Next, please. The environmental officer program, this is when an illegal dump is called in, and we get them all over the county. This happens to work in my office. He's also our waste tire director. He will go out and investigate and take whatever legal steps are necessary. We also do a flyover, usually in the wintertime when all the leaves are off the tree. The Civil Air Patrol does it for us, and we can identify these and go out and shut them down and get them cleaned up. Next, please. Here are some of the major events. Remember, this is from the 2002 annual report. Next. We collected a little over 6,400 tons of recycled materials during the year 2002. Next. We had 10 household chemical collection events where we collected 63 tons of material for disposal. You all remember these. We had them, some of them up at the east campus of the high school over here. We had some over at Alltel. Now we have these permanent centers, which North Little Rock does have one out in the Public Works yard over here that's open 1 day a week and 1 day every week and 1 Saturday a month. Next, please. And we collect lots and lots of tires. Tires are a big item here in Arkansas. We somehow seem to generate more waste tires per capita than just about anyone else, but we stay right on top of them, and all the tires we collect are recycled. They're ground up by Davis Tire over in Little Rock and are used for various and sundry things such as playground covers, landscaping, and the most important is tire-derived fuel, which we have just bought a $300,000 shredder for Davis Tire so that they can use that to make tire-derived fuel, which is used in the production of cement, paper, things like that. It's clean-burning fuel if you burn it with gas or wood or something like that. Next, please. And our recycling program. Next. We, as I told you earlier, the grant funds that we get from ADEQ are used entirely for recycling programs. Next, please. And our household chemical collections, here's a few of the details on that. Next. We collected lots of paint. We collect lots of poisons and chemicals. We collect lots of insecticides, automotive chemicals, and batteries. We also take electronics. Interestingly enough, one of our next major challenges is computers. What are we going to do with computers? I have been told that 80% of all computers that have ever been manufactured are sitting somewhere in storage waiting to be recycled. Right now it costs us $5 a computer for every one we take to have it recycled. Hopefully the manufacturer is going to take on that responsibility. Next, please. And next. There's our bus that you saw tooling around North Little Rock. The contract just expired on that, and we're going to let that go so we can do some other things. But we're really proud of our the campaign that we had last year in 2002. Next, please. Roll-off container program. This is something that's kind of neat that we don't publicize enough. If you're having a neighborhood cleanup and you'll call us, we'll bring you a roll-off container. And there's no charge to you at all. And plus we'll pay for the tipping fees and things like that of any trash or debris that you pick up in your neighborhood. Next, please. And next. Our environmental officer program, I told you a little bit about that earlier. Just to give you an idea of what we can and will do, we found a dump out in South Pulaski County last year that just was a real eyesore and that we just couldn't get anybody to clean up. So we said, okay, we're going to come in and clean it up for you, but we're also going to bulldoze down the road so you're not going to be able to get to this dump anymore. It's not a dump. Next, please. Hauler licensing program, you can see there we licensed 76 haulers operating 457 vehicles. That's a rather small situation, but what it does is it helps us monitor what is going into our landfills. Like I said earlier, if you want to go dump something in one of our landfills, you've got to have one of our haulers licenses. Next, please. Our waste tire program. Next. And once more. We have an inter-district tire program that, along with Pulaski County, we have 3 other regional solid waste districts that tie in with us. This is where we collect the tremendous amount of tires that in some parts of the state are being buried. In other parts of the state they're being used to build a dam. But as I said earlier, we grind them up here and take the metal and the fabric out of them and use them for landfill cover, just so many different things. But we're trying our very best to keep those tires back in the environment, but in an ecologically sound manner. Next, please. And next. This will give you an idea of what we have in Pulaski County. You can see our recycling centers there. You'll note we have 3 landfill facilities. We actually have 3 composting facilities, and they are in the Little Rock City landfill. Jacksonville has a composting operation, and American Composting over here in North Little Rock has one. And then our tire disposal centers, you can see we have 4 here in the county. Next, please. And next. Now, this is where it gets interesting because it can come home to you right here. You can see in the city of North Little Rock, we had over 23,000 tons that were landfilled. And then look at your yard waste, where that is, almost 16,000 tons there. Recycling, you recycle 38% of your municipal solid waste stream. So North Little Rock is really doing a good job. You can do better, but you're really doing a good job when you look at the overall picture right there. This material was included in the handout that I gave you last time. Next, please. And next. Now, here's how the municipal solid waste stream is handled in Pulaski County. You can see that 68% of it goes in the landfill. The other 32% is recycled in some form or fashion. Yard waste, obviously, is composted, recyclable. We have a material recovery facility that I believe several members of this board went out and toured along with some city staff members just recently. And our household chemical collection, most of these are sent to Rogers, where we have a processing facility up there that processes our used motor oil, paints, things like that.
How do we compare nationally?
We're probably in the lower, we're probably right under the middle, in the lower 40% or so far as recycling is concerned. Next, please. Now, this is interesting. One more. You can see who the big contributors are to our municipal solid waste stream, with North Little Rock being the second largest contributor right there. Next, please. And next. On a quarterly analysis, you can see there where we've had a couple of big bumps, and at 1999 was the tornadoes, and then in the year 2001, that's actually when the big ice storm, when we ended up processing all the trees and everything like that. Next, please. And next. You can see that's illustrated a little bit better right there with a big peak in 2001. Next. And next. Here's what we recycle. Newsprint's huge. Plastic is next. Glass is next. And the market for glass is getting smaller and smaller all the time. Cardboard is next. And you can see the rest of it. Next, please. And that's our report. Any questions?
Any questions? John, appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks for the job you did.
Thank you.
Let me, while we flip the lights back on and change programs, let me go ahead. We've got a couple public hearings, but one of which is on Alderman Witcher's legislation of 03947 prohibiting innately wild animals. While we change, the next one we're going to do is a wastewater presentation, and then I'm going to have a public hearing. And then we'll immediately follow by, unless there's an objection, by dealing with the legislation having to do with that wastewater rate increase. So let me bang the gavel and say, anybody here that wants to talk about 0347, prohibiting innately wild animals, the microphone's open.
Good evening, Mayor Hayes, City Council, and fellow citizens. My name is Stephen R. Davis. I'm an attorney. I represent Ricky and Roxanne Hollingshead. I'm also a citizen and a resident of North Little Rock, almost been a lifelong resident of North Little Rock. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you and speak on behalf of Mr. and Ms. Hollingshead. We must respectfully oppose the enactment of the proposed ordinance 03-47 as amended. Now, we do feel like that's an improvement over the original proposed ordinance, but we still think it does not go far enough to protect the rights of dog owners such as the Hollingsheads. The Hollingsheads own two large dogs who are named Cody and Kylie. Their vet states that they are both Malamute mixes. Neither of these dogs has ever shown any vicious propensities or tendencies. The Hollingsheads live over on West 21st Street and have had these dogs since they were puppies. By the way, they are neutered, so there's no hope of progeny. We're not going to have any little dogs running around at their house. They're not going to produce any. Their neighbors do not have a problem with these dogs. As is evidenced, Mrs. Hollingshead sent a copy of a petition, I believe, to the City Council, indicating that their neighbors really don't have a problem with their dogs. The Hollingsheads have kept these two dogs vaccinated for rabies since they were puppies, and they've been licensed by a reputable veterinarian since they were puppies. We mailed each of you a letter from their vet indicating that he's treated them since they were puppies, and neither one of them has ever shown any kind of vicious or aggressive tendencies at all. My clients are honest, hardworking, tax-paying citizens of North Little Rock. They've kept both of these dogs, kept them up, bought food for them, taken care of them, keep them in an enclosed, fenced area in their backyard, have done so for 5 years. All they ask from the City Council is to be allowed to just keep their dogs at home with them in peace. Our chief concerns about the proposed ordinance are these. First, if the ordinance were enacted, it would take effect immediately. And as I understand it, that means that if the City Council chooses to enact that ordinance tonight, that some animal control officers could go out as we speak and pick up their dogs. I could seize one or both of the dogs without any further authorization. And I read the ordinance to indicate that if once the dogs are seized, that unless the Hollingsheads have the kind of enclosure or containment that the ordinance provides for for vicious dogs to have, then the Animal Control Department's not going to release them. And basically, as I understand, they have to either be inside a house, and they're not house dogs, or they have to be in a cage, or they have to be held by somebody with a leash, and nobody can do that 24 hours a day. So basically, they're going to stay at the Animal Control until there's a decision made what to do with them, provided that the Animal Control actually does pick them up. I don't know if the Hollingsheads would be allowed to visit the dogs while they were in custody, as it were. They've owned them for 5 years. I don't think it'd be fair if they weren't allowed to see them, but I don't know if they would be or not.
Let me
Yes, sir.
just ask something right now. I don't know about the council, but I know that my recollection of what I would think the council would intend is certainly not to penalize someone who has been keeping animals like this as you describe them. I don't know whether Alderman Witcher's legislation would in fact do what you say, but if it does, then I think I would feel that we would all hope to find a way that your clients could keep their animals. I might suggest that this legislation is not going to come up for a little while in our agenda, and if you and the city attorney and perhaps Alderman Witcher could consider something that might be in the nature of a clarification, then that might be something that we could do. I don't know whether that's possible, but it's something that I would suggest that we make an effort during the time that we're going on to our wastewater hearing, but feel free to continue that.
Thank you, Mayor Haynes. What we would like to do, I mean, we're happy with the ordinance the way it is. And we're not concerned about the lions and tigers or any of those other animals. I think the city attorney, from my conversation with him in the past, has indicated to me that they agree that the current ordinance does not apply to the dogs that my clients own. We frankly would like to keep it the way it is. If you don't feel like you could do that, then I think perhaps could be something done with the preponderance of the evidence, who has the burden of proof. Our feeling is that the burden of proof should be on the city to prove that this is a wolf hybrid dog, as opposed to the Hollingsheads having to prove that it's not. Also, much as I admire Billy Grace, he's been a friend of mine for a long time. I believe the ordinance as it is written says the animal control director will be the one who will decide whether or not these are vicious dogs or not. And I think he's been on record in television and in print as to saying one of these dogs looks wolfy and things like that. I think perhaps his mind is a bit made up. We feel that really there should be an independent person making that determination rather than somebody who's participated in the investigation. We appreciate that this is the dogs, you know, people, there are a lot of dog owners out there, and it's like the speed bump. There's different conflicting forces here, but I'm here advocating for my clients. I just ask that we find some accommodation so they would be able to keep their dogs, and also so that it would not be such a great burden or expense to them, to have to go through a whole lot of litigation or anything like that.
I want to ask him a question.
Sure.
I just want to ask one question. I know I've been out in the backyard and actually come up to me, and I'd have to kind of push them away. Wasn't vicious at all. Now, is it the size or the look of the dog that you're worried about in the ordinance that he has? It's the way he looks, or is it the size of him? Or what is it that you'd be afraid of there?
Well, as I understand it, it's on page 3 of the proposed ordinance. Let's see. And I'm reading in part about the third sentence down. When rendering a determination pursuant to this section, any canine that reasonably resembles an innately wild animal shall be presumed to be the offspring of a domestic dog and an innately wild animal. I think basically they're talking about either wolf or coyote. However, this presumption may be defeated by a preponderance of the evidence to the contrary. There's nothing in here to say what size the dog has to be reasonably assumed to reasonably resemble an innately wild animal. And, that's one of those slippery slopes. I don't know how you determine that.
Let me just ask, though, as the legislation is currently drafted, are you saying that your client's animals you do not feel are excluded from this city based on the adoption of this legislation?
Our concern would be about that phrase, that reasonably resembles an innately wild animal.
Yeah, and I would answer that in saying that the preponderance of the evidence you just stated in terms of how these animals have never exhibited any kind of wild tendencies, I would be very comfortable in supporting Mr. Grace's saying you're okay, but I understand where you're coming from. Any other questions, Alderman Berry?
I just want to know what would be the litmus test? I mean, other than a paper profusion of having 3 generations of dogs, what would be the other litmus test for a wild animal?
Well, I think if they were vicious, if they attacked people, if they growled at people, if they bared their fangs, I think if there was some indication other than just that they look like a wolf.
Well, and I, of course, Alderman Winter's legislation, my feeling would be that, that if one looks vicious, that doesn't necessarily mean they are, and that they could easily exhibit the kind of docile characteristics that you've reported, and that to me would be enough evidence to rebut any adverse presumption. But I understand where you're coming from, Alderman Winter.
Mayor, I agree with your summary of those facts. Mr. Davis, we tried to give both Mr. Grace and whoever's involved some outs, and the preponderance of the evidence is in fact that out. And of course, if you disagree with the animal control director's decision, you still can go to a court of jurisdiction and have the judge ascertain that. And I guess one of the things that we have determined through going through all this process is even doing DNA tests. Wolf and regular canine has basically the same DNA, so it'd be based on characteristics and the way it acts and those types of things.
The one point, and of course, whatever this council decides to do, we'll get into this in just a minute. But but I know that my instructions to Mr. Grace would be that there has to be some exhibit of vicious tendencies, in addition to the appearance. Appearance would just not be sufficient, and those things that you mentioned, without any exhibiting of any vicious tendencies, would to me be more than enough. So that would be my direction to Mr. Grace. If this should be adopted, obviously we'll deal with that in just a minute or two.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your clients. We're real sympathetic to people who enjoy their animals. Any other comments on this?
Mayor, could we get Mr. Siskey to do one quick clarification for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, clarify two different things. This ordinance does two things. It specifically does a laundry list in Section 2 and that's Section 10-4 of the type of animals that will be prohibited. Very simple. The next issue is it amends our current vicious dog. And that's where the wolf hybrid issue comes in. Under our current ordinance, we prohibit wolves, but we're silent on wolf hybrids. I believe we're the only jurisdiction in Pulaski County that I'm aware of that does not prohibit wolf hybrids. So as a result, through communications with myself, Mr. Davis, Alderman Witcher, and Mr. Grace, we added a third example of a vicious dog, and that is a dog that is a wolf hybrid that can be deemed by a court of law that is a wolf hybrid. To give you an example of how this works, we have a trial set tomorrow in circuit court. A dog has been declared vicious by animal control officer. They appealed to Billy Grace, and they have appealed that decision to circuit court judge, happens to be Tim Fox. So tomorrow you'll have a hearing. It's a procedure. So what this allows is, for instance, say you have people with, similar to the Hollingsheads, if they have a dog that appears to be a hybrid, an administrative decision is made, the dogs are not taken into custody, they are not taken to the shelter, somebody decides we believe they are a hybrid, and therefore there are regulations on those dogs, just like there are vicious dogs. And then once that decision's made, it can be appealed to circuit court. In this particular case, we believe letters from veterinarians saying they're not wolf hybrids and other things would obviously defeat the preponderance, and that's where we ask that be clarified. But to make clear, is under this ordinance, if a dog attacks somebody or they're a hybrid, they are deemed vicious under this ordinance as written.
If you deem those two dogs of the Hollingsheads to be wolf hybrids, okay, what happens to the dogs in the meantime?
They will stay in their custody. They are
stay in whose custody?
The owner's custody. They will be declared vicious dogs, as vicious dogs currently are, and this is the only restriction. They can be on a leash, they can be in their house, but if they're outdoors unattended, they must be in an enclosed structure.
So now the definition of vicious dogs comes into play.
Yes.
And what is that definition?
There are three definitions. If you look at page 2, if you look at section 3 of the ordinance, and that's code section 10-4, there are three examples.
All right.
Number 1, if a dog has exhibited fierce or ferocious behavior towards a person, that's currently on the books, or has attacked a person or another person with such severity as to cause physical injury or property damage, that's currently on the books. And the third one is the definition is you make a determination as whether or not it within at least, I believe it's 2 or 3 generations, it has some wolf hybrid in it.
Okay, so if these dogs have not exhibited fierce or vicious behavior toward a person, or they have not attacked a person or another animal with such severity as to cause physical injury or property damage, then they cannot be declared vicious.
Or that they are a wolf hybrid, then they can be declared vicious. And at that point, they're not taken away from them.
It's only animal. Does the animal control officer, is he the one that deems them to be a wolf or a wolf hybrid?
Yeah, he will make the initial determination that can be appealed to Mr. Grace, that can be appealed to circuit court, which tomorrow we have a hearing, I believe, at 9 a.m. in circuit court on a similar case.
Unrelated matter.
Yes.
Any other questions? We're still in public hearing. Yes, sir.
Howdy. My name's Ricky Hollingshead, and I just wanted to state that our dogs have never gotten out. We have electric fence around top, bottom. They've never been called to our house. They don't get out. They've never tried to growl, bite anybody. So I just wanted to know that we've never had any complaints on our dogs at all. Animal control has never been called on our animals. So I don't know what the enclosed environment it's going to consist of, but our dogs don't get out where they are. So just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
We appreciate it. With that, I'm going to adjourn this public hearing, and Mr. Mills, we're on our presentation with regard to your rate study and recommendations. If you want to take over, the microphone's yours.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and Alderman, I'm Gary Mills. I'm Director of the Wastewater Utility, and we're here to ask you for a rate increase. I bring with me tonight Dan Jackson, who is an economist with economist.com. He has done a rate analysis for us. As a matter of fact, he's done the 2 preceding rate analysis and is going to give us a short PowerPoint presentation. I've handed a handout here that will help you if you can't see the presentation on the PowerPoint presentation. Well, you can follow it on that, and Dan or I will be available for questions following this presentation or during the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Dan Jackson. I am Managing Director of the Dallas office of economists.com, where we do economic, financial, and rate-related consulting services for water and sewer utilities across the Southwest and actually all over the United States. In conjunction with the engineering firm CH2M Hill, we have recently completed a comprehensive rate study and financial plan for the North Little Rock wastewater utility. This is, as Mr. Mills mentioned, this is the 3rd such study that we have done for the North Little Rock wastewater utility. The first 2 were in 1995 and 1999. This is a copy of the report that we have just issued this past week that contains a summary and a detailed version of all of our analysis and enables the reader to understand what methodologies we employed and how we arrived at the recommendations that we're going to present to you tonight. The purpose of my presentation is to, as briefly as possible, go over the recommendations for the rates that will be required by the North Little Rock wastewater utility, both to fund its operations and to finance all of the capital repairs that are going to be required between now and the year 2007. I do rate consulting, as I said, all over the country, and one thing that everybody has in common is that nobody likes to pay higher wastewater rates. We recognize that nobody wants to see their bills go up. But unfortunately, it's something that's becoming very, very common across the United States. Sewer rates are going up everywhere. They're going up in every region of the country. There's a variety of reasons why they are going up. First and foremost, inflation. You operate your sewer system like a private business. Like most private businesses, you are subject to inflation. Inflation drives up the cost of doing business. Secondly, you have higher operating costs in certain particular areas that are really causing a lot of stress to your budget. For example, insurance has skyrocketed in the last several years. Workers' compensation, electricity. Other costs like that have gone up at substantially higher than the rate of inflation. Third, there is the need to rebuild or replace aging infrastructure. As these systems get older, as these water lines need to be replaced, those replacements have to be funded somehow. So fourthly, the federal government has provided a lot of new environmental regulations in the last several years. Federal government, like the Environmental Protections Agency, will say, we want a cleaner wastewater effluent, or we want odor control to be stronger and more strict because we're concerned about the environment. However, we're not going to pay for that. You all have to pay for it. We're only going to set the standards. You all have to incur the cost, and you all have to incur the responsibility for raising the money required to do these environmental improvements. It is something that's happening all over the country, and it is harming a lot of utilities who find the need to increase their rates just to pay for the regulations. I think that you'll find, when all is said and done, that your ratepayers both have been and will continue to be treated very favorably when you compare your rates to other cities, both here in Arkansas and across the United States. So without further ado, slide 2.
And we might ask whoever's got the control of the lights to turn them a little bit down so that those folks at home can see them, see your slides just as well as the council. All right. There we go. Thank you.
This slide right here shows your current rate structure. Currently, a ratepayer pays a total of $6.76 a month for the first 400 cubic feet of wastewater service. For every 100 cubic feet above that, they pay an additional charge of $1.69. Residential and commercial customers pay the same rate. The outside city rate, in accordance with typical rate-making methodology, is slightly higher. Minimum charge is $10.12, and the volume rate is $2.53. And the industrial rate, as you can see, is the same as the residential and commercial rate. However, industrial customers tend to put out higher strength sewage into your system. When high strength sewage is put into your system, it costs more to treat that. And so industrial customers who typically do that are charged a premium for their higher strength. A residential customer puts out what's typically called domestic strength sewage. In other words, it's of about a certain strength level, and they're not charged a premium because homes typically don't put out high strength sewage. So these are the typical rates. The average customer inside North Little Rock uses about 800 cubic feet of sewer service a month. That translates to about 5,500 gallons, and they pay a total of $13.52 per month. Slide 3. Now, have your rates gone up? Well, yes, they have. Those of you who might recognize me know that I gave the same presentation before this council 4.5 years ago, the last time the North Little Rock wastewater utility requested a rate increase. So, as you can see from this chart right here, over the last 15 years, the North Little Rock wastewater utility has raised its sewer rates by 36%. Now, that sounds like a lot. However, look what's happening out in the rest of in the country. During that same time, the inflation rate has been 47.2%. So in other words, your rate adjustments over the last 15 years have been at less than the rate of inflation. So with your rate increases of 36% and inflation of 47%, that means that your rates are, in real terms, 10% cheaper today than they were in 1988. Now, as I said at the outset of this presentation, water and wastewater rates both are going up dramatically around the country. The average water and sewer utility across the United States has raised its rates by 80% in the last 15 years. In certain areas of the country, like the Southwest, Arizona, California, those rate increases have been even higher. That just goes to show you that rate increases are a fact of life, and they're happening everywhere, and there really is not a whole lot utilities can do about it. Next slide. This chart right here shows how many customers that you currently have in your utility. The North Little Rock wastewater utility currently provides service to just over 30,000 customers. What is interesting about this chart is that the number of customers has not significantly changed in the past 2 years. It was 30,385 in 2000, and it has increased nominally to 30,771 today. What that means is that you only have a limited amount of growth. So the extent to which you need to repair and replace your system, that burden cannot be financed by new ratepayers. It has to be financed by your existing ratepayer base. Next slide. This also, I just wanted to present a few brief numbers here on what your budget looks like. This budget shows that your staff has done an admirable job at keeping your revenue requirement as low as possible. In 1995, it costs $6,148,000 for this city to provide sewer service to its customers. Here, almost a decade later, the cost is $7,434,000. In 10 years, between 1995 and 1999, your total costs went up by about 13%. Between 1999 and 2003, they went up another 7%. That means they've gone up by about 20% in the last decade. Once again, at a rate that's been lower than the rate of inflation. What that tells the viewer is that you have done everything you could to keep your cost increases to a minimum. Unfortunately, as we look down the road in the future, this is not going to continue to be the case. That's because this utility is going to have to spend an awful lot of money repairing and overhauling your system. You've got to do things such as line replacement on Highway 70. You've got a third phase of your Faulkner Lake treatment plant that has to be put in place. You've got an overhaul that's going to have to be done at your White Oak plant. These are all large capital expenditures. It's like replacing the roof on your home. It's got to be done. The old roof is aged out and needs to be replaced. And unfortunately, since you're not having a lot of growth, it's your current ratepayers who have to fund the costs. It is these capital costs that are driving the need for a rate adjustment here in the city. Slide 6. Now, this rate adjustment that we're recommending tonight is intended to be in place through the year 2007. In order to come up with this rate recommendation, we had to do some analysis and come to a series of assumptions about what is going to happen to your utility over the next 5 years. We went over these assumptions in great deal with the staff, and the staff and we generally agree that these are reasonable assumptions. Now, of course, nobody can truly predict the future, but the good thing about the water and sewer business is that costs are more easily forecast than they are in a lot of other industries, because it's not like tomorrow people are going to stop using water or stop using sewer service. You know, the demand is fairly constant. Now, as we go through each of these assumptions, we're going to see why there is a need for a rate adjustment. First and foremost, as I said earlier, your customer base is going to only grow at a very limited rate, only about 1% per year. Secondly, your O&M expenses are going to increase probably at about the rate of inflation. They might even increase it slightly higher than the rate of inflation, because such items as insurance and workers' compensation are driving up your costs to such a great extent. Third, as we said earlier, your capital outlays, your capital construction is going to be fairly significant, about $650,000 per year. And in next year, it's going to be about $1.4 million as the Highway 70 relocation is completed. Next. Furthermore, the last time you expanded the Faulkner Lake plant, you issued debt in order to fund that construction. You got the debt deferred for a couple of years, which was good for your ratepayer because it deferred the need for another rate adjustment. But beginning in 2004, that debt service is going to start to become due. It's going to be about $400,000 a year, and you're going to have to pay that debt service. Next. Finally, you're going to have to issue about another $6 million in debt sometime around the year 2006 to finance both Phase 3 of the Faulkner Lake overhaul and an overhaul of the White Oak plant. This is not an optional or discretionary expenditure you need to make. These are expenses that absolutely have to be made. Taken together, when you look at those 5 bullet points there, you see the need for a rate adjustment. Next. This sort of sets it all out in graphic form. This line right here shows how much revenue you would continue to accrue between the year 2003 and 2007 if you did not raise your rates. If you kept your rates where they are, this is the amount of revenue that you'd recover. You're just about even in 2003. However, you are running a deficit here in 2003. The deficit is going to get significantly greater in 2004 through 2007. Now, why is that? The blue portion of the bar chart here is your operating expenses, salaries, rent, truck maintenance, that kind of thing. As you can see, in every year, your operating expenses are well below the amount that you're recovering from your rates. So why do you need to adjust your rates? Because your capital expenses here are increasing to the point where you need to find a way to finance those. It is the capital expenditures that's driving the need for this rate adjustment. Next. This chart right here summarizes our recommended rate adjustment and our proposal to this council. Basically, it calls for an across-the-board adjustment of 21%. Right now, your minimum charge for inside city limit customers would go from $6.76 to $8.16 for the first 400 cubic feet. The volume charge would go from $1.69 per 100 cubic feet to $2.04 per cubic feet. And the amount would be slightly higher for your outside city customers. In a minute, I'll show you what the impact will be on a monthly bill. Let's go to that next chart. This chart right here shows what the impact will be on your monthly bills. Somebody who uses only a minimum amount of sewer service, only 400 cubic feet or less. That's about, like I said, that's about somewhere around 3,000 gallons a month. Right now, they pay $6.76. That amount would increase to $8.16, or approximately $1.40 per month. As I said earlier, the average ratepayer uses approximately 800 cubic feet per month. That means that their bill, their monthly bill, would go from $13.52 to $16.32, which would be an increase of approximately $2.80. Next chart. Now, this rate adjustment is forecast to be in place through the year 2007. This chart right here compares your rates to other cities here in Arkansas, as well as the state average and the state high. The amount that's being compared is at 5,000 gallons, which again is approximately equivalent to 800 cubic feet, which is approximately the average that somebody here in the city of North Little Rock uses per month. At 5,000 gallons, the average rate would go from $11.30 to $13.63. As you can see, that amount remains lower than the average across the state of Arkansas, and it remains lower than cities such as Jacksonville, Fayetteville, and Rogers. It's substantially below the state high. The rate as it exists right now is one of the lowest rates in the state of Arkansas. As you can see right now, at $11.30, there aren't that many cities here in this state that have a monthly rate that's lower than that. One thing to keep in mind when looking at this chart is that our rate is forecast to be in place through the year 2007. I feel fairly confident in predicting that most, if not all, of these utilities here are going to do some form of rate adjustment in the next 5 years, which means their rates are going to go up while ours stay at the proposed rate. Now, to emphasize, let's compare what our rates are to the city of Little Rock. Little Rock, feeling the same type of pressure that's being felt by you, has had 3 rate adjustments in the last 4 years. Right now, for 5,000 gallons of service, a ratepayer in the city of Little Rock pays approximately $22.42 a month. Your rate, even under this proposal, will be substantially less than that. It will be $13.63, or approximately 40% less than the city of Little Rock. So, even under this rate proposal, the ratepayers of this city will still be favorably compared to Little Rock and many other cities here in the state of Arkansas. I just want to summarize that by reemphasizing what I said at the outset of this presentation. What you are facing here is similar to what many other utilities all across the United States are facing right now. You're all facing increased costs, you're all facing inflation, you're all facing increased federal environmental regulations, you're all facing the need to replace aging infrastructure. But in closing, I want to point out a few very important aspects of our recommendations. First, this recommendation will impact all ratepayers equally. All ratepayers will see their monthly average bill increase by approximately 21%. The primary reason for the adjustment, we cannot emphasize this enough, it's capital spending. It's something you don't have any control over. You need to do these expenditures. Third, O&M expenses are not driving the need for the rate adjustment. The rate is forecast to remain in place through the year 2007, at which time the rate should, of course, be reevaluated. And finally, the trend is going to continue across the rest of the country. According to national standards and the American Water Works Association, the average wastewater utility is forecast to increase its rates 25% in the next 5 years. Your rate adjustment at 21% continues to be below and better than the national average. That concludes my prepared remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Any questions on the presentation? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me now open the microphone to the public hearing that we've called in commenting on the wastewater request for rate increase. Ard?
My name is James Ard, and of course I'm not for increasing, but we need to improve the system, and from being out around construction, I do know some of the work that's going on in the sewers, replacing them. with new inserts and things of this nature. The only thing I say is sad for the public, and forgive me, Mayor, for saying this, but we just had to go into waste to recycling, and then you hit the people with lower incomes or the people with some fixed incomes with two whammies. I am for the rate increase, but I sure wish this council would figure out a way to help us with the recycling. Thank you.
Microphone's open.
Mayor, city councilman, council lady, I'm Buddy York. I just want to say that, you know, that comes at a bad time for me. If it was a little 18 months away from now, it wouldn't hurt me near as bad, but I've had 16 calls today about the increase, and a lot of people's in the same shape I'm in. They just, you know, they just can't stand it anymore. It's about all they can handle, what they got now. And I'd just like to ask if you'd put it off 18 months. This man got me so depressed over here, they just talked to me, I could go home and shoot myself. Now that you know, that is depressing, hearing all that, but it's a fact. We gotta go through it. But I think we could wait a little while on it. There's a lot of people it's gonna hurt bad. If you're up working, got a good job and all that, it might not bother you, but it bothers me, it bothers the people that call me. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. York. Microphone's open. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the public hearing. Would you, Ms. Whitby, please call the legislation?
Let's go ahead and read it.
Please. That's R03-64.
This is an ordinance fixing rates for services furnished by the sewer system of the city of North Little Rock, Arkansas, and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. First reading.
Have a motion.
Third and final?
I think that's the third and final, isn't it?
Third reading.
It's already on third and final?
Yes.
Let me just mention a couple things, and then let me get a motion for adoption.
Motion adoption, I want to speak to some.
Second. Motion made and seconded, and I'll just make some comments at the end. Alderman Gibson.
I guess probably Mr. Mills or the consultant, either one. There's two sets of little questions. Maybe the consultant because they're number questions. So, in reviewing this, I guess I asked the question because I asked the question probably in 95 and 99. Can we not at some point look at adding, instead of going up 13% and 7% and 21%, can we not look at a schedule of going up at a 5 or 6% a year to cover these costs, other than coming back and getting, you know, obviously this 21% increase is a rather healthy increase. Is that why cannot we look at doing a 5% a year for 5 years, which would lessen the impact? I think I can answer my real question. Is the capital outlay you've got in 2004, it requires upfront money.
That's the primary reason why, at this time, an annual rate adjustment would not be in the best interests of the utility. However, in future years, when the rate is re-examined, that option may be more palatable based on what capital improvements need to be made in the second decade of this century.
I guess my statement then to Mr. Mills and the Wastewater Committee is that as we move forward, let's don't get ourselves in a situation. I know you've had 2 straight months where the payments didn't meet your obligations. That's right. And obviously you've got a long-term situation coming in, and you've got a 2004. But as we move into the 2006 and 2007, in the period of time is at the end of this, let's look and see if we can't find some way to put in an annual increase in our sewer rates so that we don't have this much impact at one time. Based over 5 years, the $1.40 or $2.80 a month isn't a lot of money. But if we wait and if we do it before we need it and take lesser amounts but spread it over 3 or 4 years at the same time, it would probably be more helpful, not only to the people in North Little Rock, but to the city council.
That'll be a prime consideration when we look at it next time.
Because the council would consider it a prime interest to see a reflection like that at the time it's addressed. Alderman Height.
Yes, I just question, are we raising rates in 2003 for the same reason we raised rates back 4 years ago?
very, very similar reasons. We were looking at Phase 2 improvements at Faulkner Lake, which were close to a $10 million project, and we were looking at debt service and capital improvements at that time as well.
So this is about a 4-year cycle then on capital improvements?
That's about right.
Is that the
We
history?
predicted this. We thought that this rate increase would actually go 5 years, and it almost has. We predict that this one will go for 5 years.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I just want to make a comment, Mr. York, and some of the comments that were made, in relative to the timing on when increases like this come about. There's no question that many people are challenged right now. And maybe a year ago, or maybe 18 months in the future, it might be a better time. But I think, at least the way this council, I feel, and I don't want to speak for everyone, tries to deal with rate increases is when it's the last possible prudent time that we have to deal with them. And unfortunately, it wouldn't have been a good idea to come and say, okay, a year and a half ago times were good, let's raise rates. I mean, that's just not a way that at least I would support doing business. I know that I opened up my email today, and Arkansas Business had a daily blurb, and one of the things that hit me right in the face talking about the city of Paragould. And I'd almost have to say some of these numbers are inaccurate, or almost seem to be inaccurate, but the city council of Paragould gave the go-ahead for Paragould Light and Water to increase their monthly fee from roughly $25 to $36 almost, which is up to $10.24 to a total of $36. And it indicated in this statement, and I don't really have a hard time believing this to be accurate based on the slide up there, but said the state average, unless it's through the rural system, is $41.34. So, and apparently the city council of Paragould went ahead and supported that kind of a rate increase up to that $36 amount. I know that we work very hard in trying to keep our rates as low as possible, and in fact, when we took off sanitation as a result of the support of the 1-cent sales tax, I know through Alderman Thomas and others who supported this, and I did too over the last 14 and a half years, we've probably reduced our electric rates somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20%, would be my recollection over when we walked in the door. The merger of the two water systems, our rates are going to go down, and will go down for the next 5 or 6 years, which we were looking at a substantial increase several years ago when the two systems were not merged, and the city of Little Rock was looking at raising our rates significantly. I would think, and I'm going to ask Mr. Sisson just to help satisfy my curiosity, that over the last 10 to 15 years, that overall it's costing people less, with the exception of some of the services we don't have any control over. But your basic services, water, wastewater, electricity, those I feel pretty strongly have gone down over the last 15 years, and I would be very proud of the efforts that this city council tries to do in being prudent. And I support this rate increase. The only thing I'd ask the consultant is, he continues to use the phrase rate adjustment. I'd just like to ask him if there's ever adjustment, in my definition, goes up and down. Since he's been consulting, have you ever supported a rate adjustment that's gone down?
No.
I didn't think so.
Just...
We unfortunately hate to call it like it is, but it's a rate increase. And so, with that explanation, I hope that the community understands that we don't like to do this any better than we have to. And with that, I'll ask for a vote on the motion. Ms. Whitley, would you call the roll?
Gibson?
Yes.
Yielding? Yes. Robinson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Vestal?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
On the emergency, Gibson?
When does this need to go into effect?
October 1st.
Okay, Gibson votes yes.
Yielding?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Vestal?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Mills, we appreciate the rate adjustment comments, and you know, we look forward to working with you, and we don't want to hear from you for 5 years.
We'll do our very best, Mayor, and I want to say thanks, gentlemen and ladies, for looking at a very difficult problem, one I know you had a hard time dealing with. Thanks again for all your help and support.
You're welcome, and with that, I've been requested to take a 5-minute recess, and it's 8:30, and so 8:35 we'll reconvene. We're in recess. just reminded me of the time, and it's a waste. So with that, let's go back to the agenda, and Ms. Whitley, if I'm not mistaken, we're ready to go to old business.
Yes, sir. Resolution 0371, Mayor Hayes.
All right, Mr. Sykes, I do anything on 304 West 7th Street.
Mr. Susky has suggested that we send it back to the Historical Commission since it is in the Historical District.
Yes, Mayor, if you recall, we held this one so I could review the ordinance. Kind of unusual, this property falls in the historic district. If a owner wishes to demolish a house, they must get the approval of the commission. The ordinance is silent if the city council chooses to. I believe y'all could anyway if you chose to do so, but recommendation after talking with the former chairman of that commission may refer it to the commission, see if they have any input.
Without objection, it'll be done. That'll be done. We'll refer it to the History Commission for what purpose?
Okay.
Just for their input, advice, see if they can help somebody find it, or if you want, you can go ahead and pass it, order it torn down.
Well, once they get it, what are we going to ask them to do then?
To take a look at it, if they agree that it should be torn down or think that there may be a way to preserve the historic structure.
All right, well, why don't we do this? And why don't we refer it to the History Commission, and I'll hold it for 30 days, so the first meeting in October. Now, will I still have enough time to hold it, or should I?
It's been on the agenda 3 times.
And how many can we put it on?
6.
All right, well, then we'll hold it till the first meeting in October and ask that the History Commission make its recommendation to us with regard to this legislation, by the end of the month. Historic District Commission. It'll be referred to them, and that we're asking that they make their recommendation to the council in writing by the end of the month. With that, next item.
Resolution 0380, Mayor Hayes.
Alderman Height and I, in fact, Alderman Thomas ended up dropping by, visited with the people in the neighborhood, and while I don't know that there was any consensus, I think there was an appreciation and an understanding with regard to the speed hump. We are going to lower it, and we're going to put some additional signs out there. We're also going to look to see if there are any parking problems that may cause hazard. Mr. Marvin's going to do that. We're also going to do another study. I think both sides, while I don't think anyone claimed victory, I think both sides of this issue appreciate each other's concerns more, and hopefully we're moving toward maybe not a resolution, but a step in the right direction. I've asked that the Chief of Police pay some particular attention out there in a variety of ways, that we look at that all the streets that adjoin Incas, including Silverwood Trail and Candlewick, I believe. Flint Rock. Excuse me, Flint Rock. Flint Rock, excuse me. Flint Rock. I got you, Flint Rock. So we're warning folks, the speed limit was 20 miles out there. We are reflecting what the general state law is with regard to speed limits, and that's 25 miles an hour, so the speed limit will be raised 5 miles per hour, but there will be a sign on that that indicates there will not be any tolerance, and I've asked the chief to be very attentive of that sign, and that anybody going above 25 miles an hour, that they be given an opportunity to help support the city's general fund. So with that, I'm going to hold that.
I'd like to ask you one question, if I might, on it.
Sure.
They asked me today on this. Since the city council approved it, what does it not take the council approval to correct it or amend it?
Not to modify it, to remove it. I would, and I mentioned this. Maybe you weren't there at the time. That I certainly felt that while the council approved it, there were no specifications. There was no general description of the hump, and so I'm going to interpret the enforcement of that, and so that's going to be up to the discretion of the administration about the modification of it. I certainly wouldn't remove it without the council's approval, but I do intend to modify it.
Mayor,
going to make one comment.
Well, Alderman Thomas.
I was just going to ask one. Suppose this is just for discussion that you want to take it down to an inch. Do you have that authority to do that?
I'd say I could arguably do that.
Let me ask the city attorney. Would he weigh on that too?
Yeah, I believe the mayor could, and you could reply by saying it's going to be 20 inches, and that's the law. So if you disagree with what the mayor does on the number of inches of a speed hump, you could come back with legislation to mandate what it would be.
But he has to have the council's approval to build it in the first place?
Yes, with the policy that we've put together, that's why it was put in. But to remove it, I believe it would take legislative enactment.
Okay. That's all I have.
Sure.
I might add, I don't recall any of our legislation specifying the size of a speed hump.
It never did. Council just specified a procedure.
All right, the comment I wanted to make was that kind of the lesson that I learned because of this petition that was submitted from Shady Valley and also from the people living on Incas requesting the speed hump. Normally I get phone calls, we get petitions down here requesting speed humps, and it's usually because of one problem. They're speeding on a specific street. And normally we'll get those petitions here and we'll accept and file and we'll pass them to Mr. Marvin to do a study on. And then he comes back with his recommendation and we either vote yay or nay on a speed hump. And if we vote no, then to us that's been the end of the story. But the problem doesn't go away. Those people have still got speeding on their street. And so I think in the past we haven't really been doing what we did, the mayor and I did yesterday, was visiting with the neighbors out there in that area to try to work on their problem. We've identified some alternative ways to maybe slow the speeders down in that area. One being to leave the speed bump there, but to carve it down to a normal size. We're going to change the speed limits. We're going to put some officers out there checking people's speed on a regular basis. There are some other alternative ways of slowing people down on streets. As I think in the future, when we get petitions for speed bumps, that means that we need to look into the street and check the speed, do a study on that area to determine what measures can we come up with in lieu of a speed bump to slow the speeders down. And I think that's the lesson that we learned out in the Indian Hills area recently.
Let me ask one other question because I know there's people watching. I think Alderman Wisher had a wonderful idea, and a lot of people feel the same way, even people in Shady Valley, to give them another outlet. I hope you'll consider that.
I know it was raised, and that is an option. With that, next item.
Ordinance 0347, Alderman Witcher.
We're going to hold that. Mayor, may I make a comment about this legislation? As you all know, this piece of legislation started out primarily in reaction to a court proceedings pertaining to these animals, and like to be passed around so you could look at those animals. The one on the left is a wolf. The one on the right or the animals in question. And I think Alderman Thomas, and I know Alderman Height has been out and visited with these folks and looked at those animals. And I guess, they're probably in your minds there isn't much of a question regarding the safety of those animals or what they're like. But as we started looking at what we could do to provide a safe environment for our community, we also found that there were other areas of exotic animals that we needed to deal with. And Mr. Height and I had, and when we were in Seattle, had sat down and visited with some folks regarding exotic animal ordinances, and we had been toying with those. And I'd been talking with Mr. Susky about it for some time when this came up. And so that is how this piece of legislation that is amended came about. They are modeled after some national ordinances. They are modeled after some recommendations that the Animal Protective Association, I think it's Protection Institute, had recommended. And then they also coincide with some of our state law and some of neighboring cities that have instituted exotic animal ordinances. So, this does not deal strictly with the wolf hybrid situation, but it addresses it, and it also gives us some leverage in connection with animals that we consider to be dangerous. In the past, while an animal could attack someone, we didn't have any way to guarantee an individual's safety after the fact, after it had occurred, and this ordinance, in fact, does that. It also takes into consideration some reptile, regulating reptiles. And there are a number of incidences that I came across as I was doing my research. I think in the state of Arkansas alone, I guess in the last couple of years, there have been 6 or 8 reptile instances, one of which was former Little Rock Zoo director that was bitten by a snake. So, there's a lot more than just this one item in this piece of legislation. And Mr. Susky and I are going to hold this. We're going to tinker with it some more. We think that we addressed all of Mr. Davis's concerns, and we think that all those were covered. But we're going to hold it and look at it again because we want to give those folks every consideration we can. But our responsibility is to provide a safe environment for the community, and that's what we do want to do.
Next item. Thank you, Alderman.
Ordinance.
I have a comment. Can I make a comment?
Oh, you can make a comment.
Okay. And I know a little bit about animals, and just one thing that's never come up in this, and obviously looking at that picture, I mean, it looks pretty much like a wolf to me. But how much, of the DNA from a purebred timber wolf or whatever gray wolf or whatever wolf it might be is in that animal that they have, I don't know. So that's what we don't know. But I will tell you that if I get bit by my dog or your dog or the mayor's dog, it might be kind of nasty, but a wolf, the pounds per square inch that it can exert is much, much greater than a regular domesticated dog. That's a fact. It can, if the dog, or whatever it is, whatever we want to call it, decided it wanted to be vicious, the damage it could do would be far greater than any Labrador or Poodle or, any other kind of dog. So that's just one thing that's never come up, and I mean, it's a fact, and I think that's why we look at things like this. And that was my comment.
Thank you.
Mayor, apparently you've never gotten close to the mayor's car when Toby's in it. He's a vicious animal.
Toby will take care of it. Next item.
Ordinance 0350, Mayor Hayes.
Have we gotten any territory yet?
I believe,
Go ahead, Alderman Berry. Go ahead, Alderman Berry.
I believe we're close, and we've done. I did some research today, and there's some stuff that I need to talk with Mr. Walls about. And I think we might be close to having a place.
Where did Mr. Bowles go? There he is. Now you don't have to come up here, I don't think. Are we ready to talk to him now?
No, I need to talk to him and the property owner at the same time.
Have I got any more time left on this one?
This is the 5th time on the agenda.
But we've also got an October 1 state holiday too.
Yeah, we got
It has
deadline
to be-
October 1.
Okay. We're going to call a vote next time, so somebody better give me some property to put in there. So we're going to call it on the next council meeting.
Mayor, I did have a suggestion, because the only piece that was suggested is in Ward 3 does not mean that the only ward that we should be looking at is Ward 3. Gentleman from Ward 1, the lady and the gentleman from Ward 2, and the 2 gentlemen from Ward 4 should also be looking in their areas as well, and not leaving it up to us.
They got lots of traders in Ward 2. I mean,
well, let me just say
they've
that,
always been
let me
there.
just say that my instructions right now, first of all, we're going to call this for a vote at the next council meeting, and I understand they've been sympathetic with Ward 3. Mr. Bulls, you work with all 4 wards and see if there's anything out there besides, where we can all share the pain. If not, we're going to follow state law, and we'll just see where the votes come.
We need some in Ward 1.
Well, we need some residentially zoned property having lots for sale and to comply with state law.
All right. Well, work with Mr. Wools, and if I need to get involved, I'll be happy to. Other than that, we're going to call it for a vote next council meeting. And every once in a while, we just get outvoted. Next item.
Ordinance 0355, Alderman Thomas.
Hold that, please.
Ordinance 0360, Alderman Yielding.
I'm going to hold it, and there's some refrigerators out back that probably need to be taken care of here pretty quick, but I'm going to hold this. That's my comment.
Ordinance 0362, Alderman Thomas.
Hold that, too.
Let's go to new business.
Resolution 0382, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
This is a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a certification agreement with the National Park Service, U.S. Department of Interior, for the comprehensive management and use plan for the Trail of Tears National Historic Trail.
Move for adoption.
Second. On the motion?
Gibson. Yes. Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
Resolution 0383, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
This is a resolution appropriating funds for the city's share of expenses for 2003 on the Junction Bridge pedestrian walkway.
Move the adoption.
Second.
On the motion?
Gibson. Yes. Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
Resolution 0384, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
This is a resolution establishing a board of assessment for Counts Massey, Collins Road, Municipal Improvement District Number 1.
Move for adoption of some blanks in here.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to suggest. Mr. Thurman, is that where we put the commissioners in?
That's where you put the commissioners.
Let me just ask for a motion. Motion made and seconded. I understand that you've discussed this with three individuals, Mr. Thurman, a Terry Paff, a Fred Glover, and a Jan Zanoff.
That's right. They've agreed to serve.
And with that, I'd accept a motion to place those three names and the three blanks that accompany that. Is there a motion to amend by placing those three names? Motion made and seconded. Anything else we got to do besides?
That's it.
All right, motion made and seconded on the motion to amend. Ms. Whitby?
Gibson.
Yes.
Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
Witcher.
Yes.
Motion to adopt is amended.
Mayor, I've got a question, John.
Mr. Thurman?
Mr. Thurman, to my knowledge, none of these individuals have property within this area. Is that
All that is required for the Board of Assessment is
Okay.
that they be electors of the city of North Little Rock.
okay?
I will tell you that I have searched far and wide for electors in that area.
Okay.
And Terry Paff owns property, Metropolitan owns property out there.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, at this point, there's, it's more industrial and commercial than residential, and I know Mr. Thurman has talked to me this afternoon about names of people that might live in the area, and so I can attest he's made an effort.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adopt as amended? I don't.
No.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded on the motion to adopt as amended. Ms. Whitby?
Gibson.
Yes.
Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
Resolution 0385, Alderman Yielding.
Call it.
This is a resolution opposing the proposal currently being considered by Central Arkansas Transit Authority Board to lease two of the newly purchased River Rail trolley cars to Charlotte, North Carolina.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Alderman, let me just mention this. I visited with Alderman Yielding last week, and my support and Joe Smith, along with several others, I think Bruce Moore and a member of Judge Valines' staff, are considering the potential of leasing those two of the three trolley cars that we have. I would not be in favor of leasing either of those two cars unless a few conditions are met. One, and that is that we clear, and underline clear, at least $100,000. I think the current offer is for $112,000. That means that all other costs would be borne by the city of Charlotte and their transit system. The second thing is that money be able to be leveraged at least in the 4 to 1. In other words, that Central Arkansas Transit would be able to utilize that to buy buses, or to perhaps purchase an additional trolley car, or something that would be beneficial to Central Arkansas Transit. And the third, and obviously a part of the second, is that not simply go to lower any kind of operational cost or contribution that would not be able to be leveraged. Right now, I am told that is perhaps going to be forthcoming in the very near future, certainly by the next council meeting. And so, I would ask that the council withhold taking any action on this until we know exactly what the particulars are, and when we know, then I certainly would be prepared to voice my opinion and vote accordingly to those stipulations.
Mayor?
Alderman Yielding.
Go ahead, lady.
All right, Alderman Height.
I just question there in the second whereas it says the lease does not include the cost of round-trip delivery, nor does it include the cost of the insurance coverage against possible damage to the trolley cars, which were purchased at a price of $800,000 each. I visited with Mr. Jones, and it was my understanding that this is a turnkey job, and that Charlotte was indeed going to pay for the cost of the round-trip delivery and the cost of the insurance.
Well, I don't know if that. I don't know if that is. If that's our position. As I understand the communication that's gone on to the city of Charlotte or its transit system, that is our position, and that we have not received back. I asked Mr. Smith about an hour before the meeting, and we have not heard anything from Charlotte. So, my position is that unless those things are taken care of, unless it is a turnkey job, unless we can leverage it for $500,000 worth of things for Central Arkansas Transit, then I wouldn't support sending a couple of our trolleys down to Charlotte.
So then the second whereas right now is kind of up in the air.
All of it's up in the air.
Yeah.
We don't have any response from Charlotte, and I would not support sending them down there unless it was going to be a roughly $500,000 worth of benefit to our transit system. Alderman Berry.
Why does Charlotte need 2 of our cars?
They have a system that is ready to go. They originally were going to use a couple of vintage trolleys, and they have been deemed not sufficient enough. I don't know what the exact details are. That their system is going to be ready, and that they have on order. It takes about a year, I guess, to build these things. So they're going to be on order until they won't be available, and their system will be ready to go about 6 to 8 months ahead of our system. And they've been talking about trying to utilize, be able to utilize 2 of ours because theirs won't be ready to go when their system is.
But what if they give us their new cars and we give them 2 of ours?
Well, I don't. The one other thing too that's a part of it, and this is why that I think it'd be premature for us to vote on this, because we don't know what the details are. And in my, at least from my experience, one of the things that's happening that would be beneficial to us is that our warranty, when we took delivery on those 3 cars, our warranty has started running. And we're in there sitting in the barn, we have no idea of any kind of defects that are maybe latent or undiscoverable until those things are running. And so even though, their delivery and our warranty period is running, because our system is not ready to accept them, we may have some defects that may show up after the warranty period's run. So this would be one beneficial respect or outcome of us doing this, that if there is anything wrong with them and it is discovered, it would be much more likely to be discovered during the warranty period than when they're sitting in the barn and we don't know what's going on. So I would just suggest that we consider holding this. I know that Alderman Yielding had indicated to me that he'd be willing to do that until we found these details.
And I thought we'd have the details tonight.
And I was hoping we would, but we don't.
But I do have one other thing. Can I?
Sure.
I do have one other thing that I also found out today, and I hadn't really thought about it in this way. My first thing was we're going to have $800,000 used vehicle to use, and why should we start out with that, and what could happen to it? But also, for the same using the same reasoning that Charlotte's in the position that they're in, actually it takes 18 months to build a car from start to finish. There's only one, to transport these cars, there's only one vehicle to transport these cars. You don't put them on a rail car or put them on a lowboy and take off with them. You know, we could be in a situation if we did send these, and even if we made $100,000 and could leverage it, we could be, you know, and get some more money. We could be in a situation where if one of those things rolls off or something happens to it, then we might not have our cars to operate with. Or if something happens to the vehicle that transports these cars, we might not be able to get them back in a timely manner. So, I mean, that's just another reason. Now, as I did talk to the mayor about this, you know, certainly if we knew that they were going to pay for the round-trip delivery and insurance coverage and the insurance coverage, which they haven't said they will do at this point, and the quorum court's already passed this same resolution, you know, opposing this. They didn't think it was a good idea either. But, you know, if they were going to do all that, it might be looking a little bit better, but, I mean, they haven't said that they were. They haven't said they were going to do these things. And we don't know if we can leverage it, and there's a lot of unknowns. But in thinking about moving those things across the country and getting them back and having one vehicle to do it, it kind of worries me because this was started before I was on the council, but it's going now and we're going to do it, and we've got 2 brand new cars sitting over here, and 3. We got all 3 of them in. So, you know, I'd certainly not want anything to happen to 2 of them. And then Little Rock wouldn't have a car because we'd have the one over here to rent.
And I totally agree with Alderman Yielding, and that's why that for $100,000, I don't think the risk is worth it. For $500,000, some new buses, a new trolley car, $500,000 toward an $800,000 trolley car, I think we do ourselves a disservice if we don't vote until we know what the facts are.
I made the motion, I withdraw my motion.
Well, I mean, I'll hold it to the next meeting, and
Okay.
I think what you're saying is that based on the original proposal by Clark's, by Charlotte, it's not a good deal.
Right.
But they have not, there's been a counteroffer, and the counteroffer, nothing's come back.
That's correct. The counteroffer essentially says they pay for everything and then give us $112,000, and with that, Mr. Jones does feel that income, you know, should we clear that amount, can be leveraged in several instances. That we could either buy more buses or we could perhaps put it on another trolley car. $500,000 to me is worth the risk. And you know, I've certainly acknowledged what Alderman Yielding says. $100,000, I don't think it's worth the risk if that's all we're going to get out of it.
Let's have one simple question. What's the original length of time that Charlotte wanted to lease these cars? We're dragging this on and on and on.
we're not.
We're not. The original length of time first started out talking about 1 year. Charlotte has had some delays that have backed up the opening of their system about 4 or 5 months. So it's gone from a year to about 6, 7, 8 months, something on that order. So Charlotte has delayed because of several construction problems that have delayed the opening of their system.
So the $112,000, has that come down from an original amount?
We were talking about $150,000 at one time, so the answer to that is yes, it's come down. Again, the leveraging of the $100,000 to $500,000, and all expenses be on Charlotte. You know, the fact the warranty period, we'll start finding some of the things that if there are wrong. You know, all that argues to me that I would support, you know, that kind of scenario, and I would hope that this council would consider it. And I appreciate Alderman Yielding holding his legislation until we find out exactly what the specifics are.
Works for me.
At that point.
Alderman Gibson had a good idea.
I guess, Mayor, you know, we spend I don't know how much we're going to spend on bus benches and bus shelters because of the extra portion of it. But if we could put together, if the 4 entities, the 3 entities, could put together $160,000 for January 1 and get a 4 or 5-to-1 match with it, we'd have the $800,000 to buy another car, and it'd be better off to go ahead and do that as soon as we can, rather than wait, because it's going to take 18 months to get it if that leverage match is out there, with or without the Charlotte deal.
I would certainly support that, if that option's there.
That's 50,000.
Because I know we were talking about a fourth car when we originally were working on the system.
And so if we can do it for $50,000 per entity, I think we ought to go ahead or 55, we should go ahead and do that.
I do
How long is that 5-1 match going to
Well, and the other thing,
It's all about money.
the other thing, and we ought to know, I would feel very optimistic that we ought to know at the next council meeting what the realities are and what the
You would
options
think.
are. And the committee, and let me just indicate this, the committee is going to make, a recommendation to the board, and we're making a recommendation to actually the board of CATA is who's going to be the ones that make the decision, and I'm sure they'll be very sensitive to what this community thinks. The other thing is just to give you an idea, the expected life, and this is a reasonable life expectancy on one of those trolley cars, is 50 years. They build those things to last, and the minute it rolls out of that barn, it becomes a used vehicle. So, to me, if we can get $500,000 worth of benefit in one way or another, it's worth the risk that Alderman Yielding mentioned in terms of transit from one place to the next. So we'll know the answers to that. Alderman Yielding's held it. Next item.
Ordinance 0368, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
This is an ordinance waiving formal bidding requirements for the purchase of a piano for the Patrick Henry Hayes Senior Citizen Center, appropriating money from the general fund. First reading.
To suspend the rules and place it on second reading.
Second. On the motion?
Gibson.
Yes.
Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
Witcher.
Yes.
An ordinance waiving formal bidding requirements for the purchase of a piano for the Patrick Henry Hayes Senior Citizen Center, appropriating money from the general fund. Second reading.
Maybe suspend the rules, placed on the third reading.
Second.
And I'm going to consider that a typo. It says a piano. I think that it really truly reflects pianos. Is that not
No.
correct? Or is this just for this one, Mr. Becker?
That's
that one, the other one was under the
Under the
bid
limit?
requirement.
Okay, then that's correct. All right, motion made and seconded to suspend the rules. Ms. Whitby?
Gibson.
Yes.
Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
An ordinance waiving formal bidding requirements for the purchase of a piano for the Patrick Henry Hayes Senior Citizen Center, appropriating money from the general funds. Third and final reading.
On the question?
Gibson.
Yes.
Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
On the emergency, Gibson.
Yes.
Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
Ordinance 0369, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
This is an ordinance amending ordinance number 7558, which established Massey Collins Road Municipal Improvement District Number 1 to increase the number of commissioners to 5. First reading.
To suspend rules, place on second reading.
Second. On the motion?
Gibson.
Yes.
Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 7558, which established Massey Collins Road Municipal Improvement District Number 1 to increase the number of commissioners to 5. Second reading.
Suspend rules, place the ordinance on its third reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the motion?
Gibson.
Yes.
Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 7558, which established Massey Collins Road Municipal Improvement District Number 1 to increase the number of commissioners to 5. Third and final reading.
On the question?
Gibson.
Yes.
Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
Witcher.
Yes.
On the emergency, Gibson.
Yes.
Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Vestal.
I don't believe there is an emergency.
There is.
Yes, there's one.
Oh, there, I'm sorry, yes.
Witcher.
Yes.
Height?
Oh, Height. Yes.
Yes.
I knew you were saying that.
You didn't get to vote on that one.
I read your mind. Ordinance 0370, Alderman Gibson.
Read it once and hold it.
An ordinance amending the current city of North Little Rock, Arkansas pension plan adopted by ordinance number 7434. First reading.
Mayor, but just one comment. Next meeting, we'll have a detail, and there'll be one additional amendment to clear up another injustice, and not an injustice, just a misunderstanding within the pension plan.
Next item?
Ordinance 0371, Alderwoman Robinson.
Please call it. An ordinance allowing special use recognizing 2 existing non-conforming duplexes on a lot with an existing primary residence in the R3 zone. First reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on the second reading.
Second.
On the motion?
Gibson.
Yes.
Yielding.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Vestal.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
Witcher.
Yes.
An ordinance allowing a special use recognizing two existing non-conforming duplexes